Hi, I'm Kayleen, the host and content director of the Silva Life System, developed with Laura Silva. And I'm here with Vishen Lakhiani, the founder of Mindvalley. He's also responsible for 7 other tech startup companies, and believe it or not, he was trained as a computer engineer. Now, I'm here in Kuala Lumpur at Mindvalley's HQ, and we're interviewing Vishen because he's an incredible guy that his company has won the award for World's Most Democratic Workplace for 6 years running, and his office is listed as one of the top 10 coolest workplaces on the planet by Inc. magazine in 2012. Now, Vishen is dedicated to transforming the world by spreading enlightened ideas, building education companies that teach new ways of living like parenting, health, nutrition, meditation, and so much more. Now, he's also a philanthropist, and he sits on the board of a company called the X Prize Foundation. He has also founded something called Awesomeness Fest, which unites entrepreneurs from all over the world to raise money and share social business ideas. But what's also very interesting about Vishen is that he claims to have gotten his start with the Silva method. So Vishen, it's so great to be talking with you. You said that the Silva method was one of the most profound things that has made an impact in your career. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, absolutely. So I studied computer engineering at the University of Michigan. And if I think about actual skills I use in life and business right now, I've started over 10 companies, and very little of what I learned in college I apply day to day. But the Silva method is something I still use every single day, even though I took my first Silva method class when I was 17 years old. That was 20 years ago. So I really believe that there's an issue with the current education system. It teaches you stuff that you can pretty much Google on any smartphone, but where's the stuff on positive living or goal setting or being able to control your level of stress or being able to create healthy relationships? Now, a lot of that I learned through the Silva method. It was the first personal growth program I was exposed to.
How did you actually find the Silva method, or how did you get started with it?
So I credit my dad. My dad was a personal growth junkie, and I grew up in a house filled with books by people like Wayne Dwyer. I mean, growing up in the 80s, most kids my age were crazy about Michael Jordan or Michael Jackson. I was crazy about folks such as Jose Silva and Wayne Dwyer. Now, what happened was I was a real nerd back then. I was pretty much legally blind. I wore glasses that were this thick, and this was the 80s, so these glasses were massive. It went all the way down to my mouth. I could clean them by licking them. And I was very self-conscious because not only did I have the glasses, literally with tape in the middle.
Come on.
But I also had really bad skin. So growing up as a teenager, I had huge self-confidence issues. In my entire high school life, I only went out with friends 3 times because that was how bad my self-image was. Now, I was a really smart kid, but I would stay at home and I would read books on personal growth. I accidentally stumbled upon the Silva method when I was browsing my dad's bookshelf, reaching up for a book, and the Silva Mind Control, a 1977 version of Jose's book, fell on my head. Now, as I flipped open that book, I came across the story of a nun, and I still remember her name, Sister Barbara Burns. And Jose Silva wrote about how Sister Barbara Burns was using the Silva method and using a simple positive statement. Every time I blink my eyes, my vision gets better, better, and better. So this fascinated me. So I thought, if Sister Barbara Burns, using this statement, now in 1 year, she too was legally blind like me, she wore very thick glasses. In 1 year, she reversed it and she had perfect 20/20 eyesight. This fascinated me. So I consumed the book and I started meditating every single day. At the age of 14, I was practicing Silva for about 45 minutes a day, 3 times, 15 minutes each. Now, here's what happened, right? 2 years later, I started reaping all these benefits. I was more confident, I was healthier, goals I was hitting goals. My eyesight, though, nothing happened. Complete failure. It didn't get worse, but it didn't get better either. I still had those big glasses. And I was very confused and angry, and I remember I was kind of pissed off at the Silva method because where was this big promise? Now, I reread the book, and I in fact started reading other books by Jose Silva, and I came across one line, and I realized I missed something. That line was basically this, and it's in the book, don't jump the gun. Basically what Jose was saying is, before trying to say cure cancer, try curing dandruff. In other words, you got to build up your reservoir of belief before you can tackle really big things. And I realized that healing my eyes was such a big goal. deep down inside, I never really believed it was possible. So what did I try to do next? Well, remember, I also had really bad skin. And I thought, well, I want to get rid of my skin problem once and for all. Now, growing up, my skin was so bad that I never had a girlfriend all throughout high school. It really made me self-conscious of myself. I considered myself ugly. And I read about this experiment Jose Silva would do. Now, Jose Silva said that the skin is the organ most influenceable. Is that a word, influenceable? Jose Silva said the skin is the organ that's easiest to influence with the human mind, right? And in the book, he talked about an experiment he would do in his classes. Now, it's kind of sadistic, but this is what he'd do. He'd pull up a student in the class, hypnotize them, take a marker, tell them that this marker was a red-hot poker, put it on their skin, and in front of other students, a burn bubble would form. He would then say, watch me make it disappear. He would then tell them that his hands could heal the burn bubble. He would place his hands over the bubble, and the burn would disappear. Now, I don't know how it worked. Maybe it was the placebo effect, but it was crazy how you could influence the skin. Right. And doing my own reading, I read about situations where scientists using autosuggestion could give a command to someone that they were on a beach, even though they weren't, and their skin would actually tan. So I thought, okay, well, forget eyesight for a moment. Let me try to influence my skin. Right. Now, I followed the Silva process. Basically, simple process, just 5 minutes of visualization, 1 to 3 times a day. I was doing it maybe twice a day. In 4 weeks, my skin cleared up. And I had chronic acne for about 5 years. It cleared up in 4 weeks. I'd seen dermatologists. I'd been, applying all sorts of creams. It didn't do anything, but my skin cleared up in 4 weeks. Huge confidence boost for me. And then I started using Silva for other things. Why stop at skin, right? So I ran for, at that point I joined college, I ran for student body president. I visualized myself getting that. I did. Huge confidence boost. I wanted to be an actor because I was just really like loving my newfound sense of confidence. I ended up acting with many of the best directors in my city. And one of the most interesting things, though, happened with another goal. It was martial arts.
Yeah, no, I heard that you had some kind of competition, some kind of international competition, and that you used Silva with martial arts. Can you tell us more about what happened?
Again, remember, I was the geeky guy. I was skinny, wore thick glasses. And to help me not get bullied as much in school, my dad sent me for taekwondo, which is a form of Korean karate. It's a really popular martial art. It's also an Olympic sport. So I started studying taekwondo, and one of my goals was to represent Malaysia, which is the country I was born in an international taekwondo tournament. Okay, so again, using the Silva method, I would sit down and visualize myself practicing martial arts, being in this tournament. In the US, I'd never been to the US before. So I visualized myself at the US Open taking part. Now, funny thing happened. The instructor, the head of my taekwondo school, came up to us one day and said, hey, look, we've had this amazing opportunity. There is this competition happening, a local competition, and those of you are going to be, those of you who take part in this competition and win will get to be part of a team that's going to go to Colorado to compete at the US Open 1993 at the Colorado Springs Olympic Training Center. Big freaking deal. Yeah. Colorado Springs Olympic Training Center, my first trip to the US. I visualized this for months. I think it was about 6 to 8 months. Myself competing, winning, being part of that team, being in the USA, being in that center ring at the Colorado Springs Olympic Training Center.
So what happened?
Well, the heats happened. Now the heats are the preliminary trials before the competition. Now, and what happened was, so I'm going to stand up to demonstrate, okay? So there are 3 boards around you. Each are 1 inch thick boards of wood. And using 3 different kicks or punches, you have to break each board, okay? So I stood there, I'd been visualizing this moment for months, and at the heats, for whatever reason, every single board failed to break. Oh. So I was disqualified. And I went to watch the final competition anyway. My friend Daniel, who was this Aussie guy, same age as me, he did make it through, and he was taking part in a sparring competition there, and I was there to support him along with other people from my school. I was devastated. I knew if Daniel did well in the sparring competition, he'd make the team, but I was completely out. There was no way at this point I was going to make the team. Now, here's what happened. Daniel won a gold medal, but he also injured his leg. So he couldn't take part in the sparring round. Sorry, he won a gold medal in the sparring round. He couldn't take part in the wood breaking round. So Daniel came up to me and said, hey, Vishen, listen, I know you didn't qualify, but why don't you just put on your costume, just go, just represent the school, and just do your best. So I said, fine. Now, what did I have to lose? Now, what was weird was I never qualified, but I found myself in a position now where if I did well, I might actually make the team. But again, what were the odds, right? I never qualified. And I was competing with people who had done way better than me in the heats. Now again, the same thing. I had to break 3 pieces of wood, 3 different kicks. I hadn't really been practicing because I never qualified. But for whatever reason, everything I visualized happened. Every single piece of wood that I kicked broke. And not only did I break every single piece of wood, but I did it in 50 seconds, which was the shortest time I won the gold medal. And the next thing I know is, a few days later, my instructor comes up to me and said, congratulations, you won the gold, you're on the team. And I ended up flying to Colorado Springs to represent my country at the US Open Taekwondo Championships. Now here's the crazy part, right? And I learned 2 important lessons in this, and this is something that all of you are gonna learn sooner or later when you use Silva. First lesson is, don't worry about how your goal comes to you. Your goal may not come to you the way you expect it to. See, I thought I'd have to qualify in the heats to make the final competition, win a gold there, make it to the US Open. I was completely eliminated from the heats, but still, through a bizarre twist of fate, I ended up at the US Open. Again, God or the universe, or whatever you call it, works in weird ways, and you don't often get things down the linear path you think it's going to happen. The second lesson I learned was a lot more painful. So I arrive at the US Open, and I'm now competing. Still legally blind, still big, thick glasses. Now, I was wearing sports glasses, but the referee approaches me and goes, kid, what are you doing? And I go, why? He goes, get your glasses off. And I'm like, no, I can't take my glasses off. I can't see without my glasses. Now, I couldn't recognize someone this far away from me. He says, dude, this is America. Everyone sues everyone. Your glasses break, you're gonna sue the entire competition. We can't take that risk. You're just gonna have to fight blind. So I went into a ring completely blind, and I was facing Glenn Ryback, the Dutch national champion. So I'm there facing Glenn, at least I thought I was facing him. He could have been to my left or my right. I couldn't see. And within 30 seconds, I got kicked in the head and I ended up on the ground. I got up again, trying to figure out where the hell was Glenn and who kicked me. Another kick to the head, ended up on the ground. I was the fastest knockout in the 1993 US Open Taekwondo Championships. I ended up in hospital. I was in hospital. It wasn't too bad. I was in bed. Next to me was an Olympian, Paris Armani. So, you know, we had a great talk. But I remember on the bus ride going back to our hotel that day after I was checked out of hospital, I heard people several seats in front of me go, did you see that kid who was brutally knocked out by Glenn in 30 seconds? Boy, I would hate to be him. I was actually the fastest knockout in the entire competition, but get this, right? Everything I visualized came true. I never visualized myself winning. I never visualized myself not being in hospital. I did visualize myself in the center ring. It happened. And so again, the second lesson is you got to be very specific about what you ask for.
Right.
Okay. So anyway, still, because I viewed it in a positive sense, this gave me renewed confidence. And I started to believe the following. I started to believe I could influence luck. And I started to believe that I could somehow bend certain aspects of my life to fit visions I wanted to accomplish. And this lesson has stayed with me my entire life and led to my business success today.
Yeah, so I was going to ask about that because you've had career success beyond what the majority of the world could even imagine. Like most people in the world would not even dream of owning one company, and you've helped start several. You know, I mean, you have a global organization, you're out helping people, no less. I mean, it's really incredible what you've done. And so how is this, I mean, are you telling me that you use luck and the ability to bend reality to create this success? I mean, how does that work?
Yes, actually, yes. And many people who, look, I never studied business. I studied computer engineering, and then I felt that it just wasn't something I was passionate about. So I dabbled around with entrepreneurship. I wasn't always lucky. My first 2 businesses failed. Now, after my experience in Colorado Springs, I went on to study engineering at the University of Michigan. Something kind of funny happens, and almost all of us have gone through this. When our life is going good, we stop practicing many personal growth tactics.
Yeah.
When we feel we're in shape, we stop exercising. And for about 5 or 6 years in my life, I was caught up in the whole college scene, you know, parties, friends, travel, backpacking across Europe. I stopped meditating. And when I graduated, I found myself in an awful job market. It was 2001, Silicon Valley, the bubble had burst. 14,000 people were laid off in April 2001. I had just seen my first attempt at being an entrepreneur completely die out, and I was broken and unemployed. Now, I remember in San Francisco, which is where I was living at that time, I got online, and I remembered the Silva method, hadn't been practicing it for a while, but I decided to Google it and see what had become of that organization. I found that there was a class happening in LA that very weekend. Now, back then, the only job I could get in San Francisco was a commission-only sales gig. So many people were out, unemployed, without a job, that you know, companies were basically saying, hey, we'll hire you, but we're not going to guarantee a salary because there's so many people applying. So I was working to sell technology to law firms in Texas, of all places, and basically it was a job where if you didn't close a deal, you wouldn't get paid. I was working with guys who hadn't been paid in 3 months because they couldn't close a deal. And I was a computer engineer. I knew nothing about communicating with lawyers, selling technology on the phone, right? So I wasn't doing very well. I was making maybe about $2.5 grand a month. I was literally renting a couch from a student in Berkeley because I couldn't afford an apartment. I was renting a couch from a student. Now, what happened was I attended the Silva class, and the class was held by a wonderful lady in LA, and she was a pharmaceutical sales person. And she, in the class, spoke about how she studied Silva, and it had an amazing effect on her sales, and she rose up to become sales director. Then she decided to teach it so she could become even better. So this gave me a lot of confidence, and I decided to go back and apply some of the techniques I learned in sales. Here's what happened next, right? Now, sometimes in sales you have a good week, sometimes you have a bad week. That very next week was my best week ever. And I thought, okay, this could be chance. But the week after that was another record week and another record week. Now, normally you have ups and you have downs. Mine were just ups and further ups. This was May 2002 when I took this class. By September 2002, I'd been promoted 4 times. I was made director of sales of the company, and they shipped me out to New York to run the entire New York division of the company. I was 26 or 27 years old back then. It was insane. And I worked with that company for about a year, and I decided, listen, this is amazing. I want to use Silva to do something bigger. And that's when I started my next company, which was Mindvalley. And then there were other companies after that, Blinklist, Dealmates, a whole bunch of other companies I started, a lot of it using Silva. But I'd love to share the exact techniques I used to increase my sales. So the first thing that happened was I would visualize that the lawyers I was speaking to were having an amazing time on the call. I would tell my subconscious mind that I wanted to be able to connect with these lawyers in a really healthy way, that they would get the most out of this technology, that they would reap benefits, that they would be successful. And before calling a lawyer, the day before, I would visualize that person and visualize us having the most profound, amazing discussion. And I found that I was able to connect with people better. Now, here's where it gets crazy. Silva doesn't often say this publicly because it's controversial, but when you attend the Silva class, they teach you how to use human intuition. And being a computer engineer, I used to scoff at that, but now I really believe it. And I had crazy intuition experiences in that class in LA. So when I went back, now this, remember, was 2002, we would go out to the San Fran library and we would grab yellow pages for the cities we had to call. We'd open up the legal section, we'd skim through the names, and we'd call various lawyers, cold calling. Now, everyone else was doing that. I would go into my alpha level of mind, put my finger over the names in the yellow pages, close my eyes, move my finger down, and I would feel an impulse on the person to call, and I would call only those people. My sales doubled. And when I explained it to my boss, he was an attorney, an engineer. He told me, what are you doing? Like, how did you go from nothing to being one of my top performers? And I said, it's this thing I learned. They call it ESP, or intuition. And he's like, bullshit. Tell me your real secret. So he never really believed me. It kind of became a running joke that Vishen has this mysterious power. But that's what I believed. And I know not everyone watching this video might believe that, but that is what I believe. Call it human intuition. I can't explain how it works, but it worked for me. Following that experience working for that company, I ended up deciding that I wanted to start my own business. It was 2002, 2003, and I started Mindvalley. We were profitable in month 3, and since then I've taken Our initial startup capital for Mindvalley was less than $1,000. I've taken that $1,000 and without any bank loans, without any venture capitalists, without any investors, we've taken $1,000 and turned it into a company worth about 50 million US dollars today. Just through constant tweaking and growth and constantly visualizing a beautiful future and how we want it to grow the business.
And so, with all of this success and so much experience with the Silva method, what do you tell people who are kind of out there who have trouble or say they can't achieve their goals or that they can't do it or that they would never be able to do what you've done?
Well, I'll put it this way, right? Well, firstly, it isn't just me. There are a lot of successful people I know of who have used the Silva method. I remember meeting a Hollywood actor. I'm not at liberty to say his name, but we were talking and he brought up the Silva method, and I'm like, Silva, are you kidding me? That's amazing. I've been studying this for years, and he talked about how it had helped him in his life. I remember once meeting a Miss America winner. She was actually Miss America in the 80s. She'd been using the Silva method for years and told me about how it led to her meditating every single day. Then there's I think his name is Robert Stiller. He's the CEO of Green Mountain Coffee. Green Mountain Coffee is a multi-billion-dollar company, and their stock, I read on Yahoo Finance or Motley Fool, was one of the top stock picks of the last decade. Well, Robert Stiller of Green Mountain Coffee has Silva method classes for all his employees. Maybe there's a connection. So again, a lot of successful people use the Silva method, but it can be controversial. So a lot of them don't talk about it publicly. One of the most profound lessons I learned through the Silva method is this. Firstly, our thoughts create our reality. I really believe that. And Silva method is really a powerful way to direct your thoughts. And the problem is so many of us are hung up with the day-to-day issues that bog us down. Maybe you had a fight with your spouse or your boyfriend or your girlfriend. Maybe you had a horrible day at work. Maybe your kid was giving you trouble, or you feel a little bit like, unwell. And we get obsessed by these things. The problem is, when your thoughts create your reality, the more obsessed you are about little things, the more little annoyances you create in your life. When you do the Silva method and you learn to dream big, you're focused on big, epic things. You're focused on the businesses you want to build, the works of art you want to create, your contribution to the planet. Now, the crazy thing is, when you're focused on these big things, the little stuff, they start to vanish. And so you start to live life pretty much in flow. Things just mysteriously work out. And I think one of the reasons I've been extremely successful, whereas most entrepreneurs who I started out at the same time as me are not. I'd say 99% of entrepreneurs never make it this far, is because they get obsessed by the little things. The true Silva method, every time we had a little problem, let's say it was an employee issue, let's say it was missing a sales target, I would do the exercise. I would go to my alpha, theta level of mind, visualize the 3 screens technique, see the problem, see what I'm going to do, see the solution, then come out of it with an optimistic idea that the solution is going to happen. And I stopped obsessing about these problems. And so things would move forward at a very rapid pace. And that's what a lot of my peers tell me, like, how do you move things forward so fast? I believe it's because I'm constantly visualizing the future through the Silva method.
That's incredible. So if there's any one thing that you would have advice for people out there, like how often they should use the Silva method, or how to get involved, is there any one little tip in closing that you would have for people out there?
So when I explain it to people, Kayleen, I like to talk about these 2 concepts, right? First is what I call the reservoir of faith. Now, why did I fail to heal my eyesight in those early years? It's because you got to believe that, you got to, Jose Silva calls it desire, believe, expectancy. You must desire something, you must believe it's possible, but you must also expect it to happen. Now, when you combine that together, desire, believe, expectancy, it's sort of like saying, you got to really believe in yourself and you got to have faith. I desired perfect eyesight. I believed it was possible because I read stories of people like Sister Barbara Burns who had pulled it off. Did I expect it to happen to myself? No, I lacked that faith. So there's a concept called reservoir of faith, and it basically says this, like, you want to start with a smaller goal that you know you can do, that it seems so easy that you expect it to happen. When you attain that, think of your faith as a glass. You fill it up a little bit. And as you accomplish something else, you fill it up a little bit more. And as you fill up more faith in that glass, your belief in what you can accomplish grows and grows and grows, and you can tackle bigger and bigger and bigger things. So I started out with small things. Skin is a relatively small thing. But when you start out with Silva, they're going to teach you things such as how to program yourself to wake up without an alarm clock, how to sleep better. Those are tiny things. But really, once you accomplish that, you're filling up that reservoir of faith. The next thing you know, as you keep progressing, you're visualizing starting and selling multi-million-dollar companies. And that's really how I did it. It's building up that reservoir of faith. That idea is extremely important. I remember reading the biography of Sam Walton, who was the richest man in America in 1989 or so. And I love this quote by Sam Walton. In everything I do, I expect to win. Thinking like that often turns into a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you got to expect to win. You got to expect that. But you got to be aware of this reservoir of faith. Most people right now cannot expect that they would own a $100 million business. That's fine. Start with something small. Start with learning to remember your dreams or learning to program yourself to wake up on time. Then start to have a simple business bringing you $5 a day. I started like that. My first visualization, simple business where I was earning enough to pay for my breakfast every day, and start building up from there. And then it's about the speed at which you build up, right? Now, the second concept is what I call the impossibility ceiling. So based on our peers, based on the people around us, we all have a vision for what we can and cannot do. And I remember growing up as a kid in Malaysia, I had this very limited vision of what my life would be when I grew up. And when I moved to Silicon Valley, I was surrounded by different people, and that vision grew. And when I attended Silva classes, I again met remarkable people. That vision grew. And now I do everything I can to associate with crazy successful people, because what I see them accomplish helps me create ideas for where I want to take my life. So your ceiling of impossibility is where you believe you can go in life. And as you associate with the right people, as you read biographies, as you fill up your reservoir of faith, the ceiling grows higher and higher and higher. Right now, one of my biggest goals right now is to give away $1 billion before I die. And I am so confident on this. I'm so positive that this is going to happen that to me it's an afterthought. I just know it's going to happen. And I know it's going to happen because I've worked my way up this ladder of friends and contacts where, you know, I've been fortunate enough to meet and talk to some of the most remarkable minds in America, from people like Peter Diamandis, who started the X Prize. I sit on the innovation board for the X Prize. About a year ago, I had a 1-hour talk with Richard Branson on his ideas of success. And so being around people like that has given me a really big impossibility ceiling. But again, it started out really small. 10 years ago, today is, as we're recording this, it's June 2013. In 2003, I was basically, you know, just starting out. I was working for a company and really just getting started at where I was. And 11 years ago, I was pretty much sleeping on a sofa in Berkeley, renting a sofa from a college student. So a lot of things can happen really fast when you understand how to direct your thought, when you understand concepts such as the reservoir of belief, the impossibility ceiling, when you tend to really dream big. The sad thing is, I guess my biggest piece of advice is this, the sad thing is that so many people who take the Silva method stop at using it to remember their dreams and cure a headache. Now that's fine, but imagine what a waste that is. Imagine if Superman simply, you know, operated as Clark Kent and used his super fast speed to write faster. I mean, you'd want to smack him on the face because he has all this latent potential that he's holding back. That's what all of us have. We simply have ridiculously average, mediocre impossibility ceilings that keep us from dreaming big. My big advice would be start working on your reservoir of faith. Start aiming for goals. Start building up those goals. Elevate your impossibility feeling. Read biographies. Set epic goals. If you don't believe you can accomplish it now, that's okay. As you build up your reservoir of faith, you're going to believe you can accomplish this. All of us should be leading epic lives. And again, I think the Silva method is a wonderful system of framework to help people get there.
That's so wonderful. Thank you so much, Vishen. It's incredible to hear your story and to hear about what an incredible impact the Silva method has had on your career and your success. And I really appreciate all the tips and the tools that you've shared with us and our audience today.